Welcome to Unpacking Brain Drama. I am Pratiti Pathak, and I am your host and your guide on this unbelievable journey of life, self-discovery, self-empowerment, and living by intention. Why your emotional state matters more than you think. I want to talk to you today about your frequency of your future. So, welcome to another transformative episode of Unpacking Brain Drama. And hello to my unbelievable, amazing Trailblazers. Um, Today, this is what we're going to be talking about. It's something that people mention to me all the time. And in fact, it's probably one of the things that I hear the most from people, even people that I just meet or in a grocery line, in a department store. It doesn't matter where I am. Even after a workshop, people will come up to me at the end and say, Pratiti, I just love your energy. They'll come up to me after a workshop, after a networking event, a coaching session, after they hear me speak, or just in public in general. They will literally say, I love your energy, not your strategy, not your coaching model, not your worksheets. They love all that too, right? But not your systems. No, they literally come up to me for years and I would smile and say thank you. But recently I was thinking so much about this. Like, what are people really saying to me when they say that? Because I don't think they're talking about my excitement. I'm super energetic and excited, but I don't think they're talking about my enthusiasm. I think they're talking about something so much deeper than that. They're talking about frequency. They're talking about my frequency. They're talking about my emotional state, right? The state we all live in, right? The energy we consistently bring into our relationships, our business, our health, our homes, our conversation. Ultimately, it's the energy that we consistently bring into our lives, right? So I want to say that this is what we're going to unpack, something that I believe affects every single one of our results that we create, the frequency of your future. And I want to start with this thought. People don't just experience your words. They experience your state of being. Let that sink in for a moment. People don't just experience your words, they experience your state of being, right? You probably already know this is true. Have you ever walked into a room and immediately felt tension? Nobody said anything, yet you could feel it, right? Have you ever sat next to someone who was stressed out? You could feel it, right? Have you ever met someone who instantly made you feel calm, safe, seen, inspired, motivated before they actually even spoke a word? You could feel it. We've all experienced this, which tells me only one thing. Human beings communicate on a level far deeper than words, right? We consistently broadcasting our emotional state, whether we realize it or not, whether it's up or down, whether it's positive or negative, we are always broadcasting a signal, right? The frequency. And that state affects everyone around us. Not only the people that are just around us, but it affects us, right? Your emotional Wi-Fi, that is what we're talking about. Think about your phone for a moment. I used some of this analogy last week as well. Think about the signal. If your signal is weak on your phone, what happens? Calls drop. Happened to me earlier this morning. right? I'm in a dead zone. What does that mean? There's no Wi-Fi, right? Messages don't send, apps don't load, right? Navigation stops working. The phone isn't broken. The signal is weak. And I think the same thing applies to us. I think the same thing happens in our lives. Many people think something's gone wrong, something's not right here. Maybe it's me, I'm broken, right? I hear the word broken a lot for when people are describing themselves. I was broken. I've even used that word because it resonates to so many people in my chapter that I wrote. Right? But what if they're not broken? What if they're simply operating from a weak signal? What signal would that be? What would a weak what would a weak signal sound like? Stress, fear, overwhelm, scarcity, resentment, jealousy, anxiety, judgment, insecurity. All of those are weak frequencies, right? That's a weak signal. It's a low frequency. Okay. These emotional states interfere with our ability to think clearly, just like static interferes with communication. The problem isn't necessarily the person. The problem may be the frequency they're operating from, right? That's science. Okay. And let's make this practical. When we're stressed out, our bodies release cortisol and adrenaline. Those chemicals are extremely and incredibly useful when we're actually running from danger, right? But not so much when we're just trying to solve a problem, right? Or build a relationship or lead a team, right? Parent effectively, grow a business, or make intentional decisions, right? Stress narrows our focus. Our brain becomes preoccupied with survival. Creativity decreases. Patience decreases. Empathy decreases. Our perspective decreases along with our possibility to make changes. Everything becomes smaller, right? More narrow. Our thinking becomes more narrow. Now, think about what happens when you're in a higher frequency, right? When you're having a stronger signal, when you're feeling gratitude, when you feel thankful, when you feel love. That's when you feel more connected, peaceful, inspired, curious, right? Helpful. Your body chemistry changes. Your thoughts change. Your perception changes. Your decision-making power changes. Your relationships change. Your circumstances haven't changed. Okay. The circumstance always stays the same. Your state has changed, right? The level at which you're vibrating. That's the frequency we're talking about here. Your state of being influences everything. Okay. What is your emotional altitude? I want you to imagine being on an airplane. When you're sitting on the runway, what do you see? This is going to be so good. You see traffic, you see buildings, you see obstacles, you hear noise, distractions. What happens when the plane reaches 30,000 feet? Suddenly everything looks different. You see a bigger picture when you look out the window, right? You gain perspective. The landscape didn't change. Your altitude changed. The same thing happens emotionally. Fear is a lower altitude. And so is stress and scarcity and resentment. Gratitude is a higher altitude, okay? Along with love and compassion and purpose, right? When your emotional altitude rises, your perspective expands. and expanded perspectives create better decisions because you have a better you're like on this overlook, right? You can see things a lot clearer. Your frequency is the filter that you're looking from. One of the biggest lessons that I've learned is this: your frequency becomes the filter through which you experience life. Think about two people experiencing the same exact circumstance. One sees opportunity, one sees a problem. One sees growth, one sees obstacles, one sees possibility, and the other sees limitations, right? Same circumstance, different filter, different frequency, different experience. Many of us believe life creates our emotions, right? Our situation, our circumstance. I think our emotions often shape how we experience life, right? Why do people love my energy? Let's go back to that original comment that I hear all the time. Pratiti, I love your energy. Here's what I wish more people understood. My energy isn't something I was born with. My energy is the result of is not the result of having some easy life, right? My energy doesn't come from the absence of adversity. My energy was developed over time. My energy was cultivated, practiced, and chosen on purpose. Okay. I've experienced grief. I've experienced loss, uncertainty, abandonment, abuse, right? Toxic environments, heartbreak, lots of challenges, lots of obstacles, just like everyone else, right? We all experience adversity and obstacles and challenges in different ways, on different levels, right? The difference isn't that life spared me, right? The difference is that I became intentional about the emotional state of being that I practiced on a regular basis. And I repeat that word practice, like repeat, right? We're constantly on this rinse and repeat cycle, but unfortunately, so much of us are rinsing and repeating old patterns that keep us in a lower frequency. They keep us with a weaker signal, okay? Because eventually I had to realize something. I couldn't always be in control of what was happening to me. I had to start looking at it on why it was happening for me. And more importantly, how could I influence how I was going to respond to it, right? That's where my resilience lives. That's where it came from. That's where my ownership came from. That's where intentional living comes from, right? Protecting your frequency, being aware of it and creating it intentionally, right? Taking ownership of what's going on. Doesn't matter whether it's your fault or not. The arrow that gets thrown at you maybe wasn't your fault, but how you're going to deal with it, or whether you're going to shoot another arrow on yourself, is absolutely in your control, right? So protecting that frequency really matters. And it really mattered to me. And it should really matter to you too. Think about what lowers your frequency. What are some things? Gossip, complaining, right? Negative conversation with yourself, doom scrolling, victim mentality. Poor me. Why is this happening? Having lots of pity parties for yourself, creating chronic stress, unresolved resentment, right? The lack of the ability to forgive, constant comparison. Now think about what raises your frequency: gratitude, love, patience, kindness, movement, right? Nature, meditation, meaningful conversations, acts of service, connection, learning, curiosity, purpose. The people that you surround yourself with, the books that you read, the podcasts that you listen to, the questions you ask, all of that influences your vibrational frequency. Everything, everything around you is what affects your weak signal or strong signal, which means not everything deserves the access to your energy, right? You have to pick and choose what you give your energy to, right? I named this episode The Frequency of Your Future because you get to decide, right? Now we have to arrive at the most important part of today's conversation. Most people focus on what they want: the future house, the future relationship, the future business, right? The future income, the future health. But what I want you to ask yourself is a more important question. Who are you being while creating? Right? Who are you trying to be while you're trying to create those things for yourself? Because here's what I've observed. And I want you all to know, and I know that I remind you this on a regular basis, majority of my observations started with me, observing me. And that's where I want it to start for you too. It's so easy sometimes to hear something amazing and you're like, oh, yes, this person and that person needs to hear this. I want you to hear it and apply it to you. Observe you first. People want abundance while practicing scarcity. People want confidence while practicing worry and stress and anxiety, right? People want connection while practicing resentment. People want confidence while practicing self-criticism. People want success while practicing self-doubt. The future isn't created solely by setting goals, okay? It's created through repeated states of being. So many times when I ask my clients, how would you like to feel about any certain situation we may be discussing in a session? And so much of the time, especially when it comes to productivity and business and business growth, majority of the time, 9 times out of 10, my client will usually say something like, I want to feel motivated. I want to feel excited. I want to feel inspired. Those emotions are very fleeting. And I encourage you to feel steady and grounded and calm and focused, right? The frequency that you rehearse becomes the reality you experience. But when you wait for bursts of motivation, they will be not as often, right? They will be a lot more rare. What you want, you don't want to clean your house and clean your room just when you're motivated, right? You don't want to fill up your gas tank only when you run out of gas, right? You want to keep that steady gas fuel coming in so that you don't run out of fuel, right? That's the same thing with your life. You want to be calm and steady and grounded and focused so that it's consistent and it can take you longevity, right? It can take you for the long haul. The frequency you rehearse becomes the reality you experience, right? Your emotions is where you live. That is your home address. Okay. I want to leave you with that concept. It's one that I've been thinking about a lot. Okay. Your frequency is your emotional home address. Where do you live most of the time? Do you live in gratitude? Do you live in curiosity, possibility, service, compassion? Or do you live in fear, scarcity, stress, frustration, worry, doubt, jealousy, comparison, comparisonism? Because wherever you spend most of your time emotionally, that's where you live. That becomes your default state of being, right? That becomes your go-to address. That's where you live most of the time. And your default address, your default state of being eventually shapes your entire life. So, as I wrap up episode 195, is that amazing? 195. I want to leave you with one question. If someone spent 1 week inside your mind, this is the scariest question ever, isn't it? If someone spent 1 week inside your mind, listening to your thoughts, watching your habits, observing your conversations, and feeling your emotional reactions, what future would they predict you're creating? That's a solid question to ask yourself. And I bet right now, if that like brought up a gulp and a lump in your throat, that's real. Okay. Because that answer may tell you more than any goal you've written down. Okay. Trailblazers, the goal isn't to fake happiness. The goal isn't to pretend life is perfect. The goal isn't to toxic positivity, right? The goal is awareness, to be conscious of our state of being, the frequency that you are practicing every single day, because your thoughts influence your emotions. Your emotions influence your state of being, and your state of being influences your decisions, and your decisions influence your results and the life experiences that you are creating. The frequency you rehearse becomes the future of your life experiences. So this week, pay attention to your signal. Pay attention to your state of being. Pay attention to the energy that you're bringing into every single room, and especially the room that you're in all by yourself, because the future is being shaped by it. So thank you for joining me for another beautiful episode of Unpacking Brain Drama. And remember, we are here to create our results by design, not by default. Take care, Trailblazers. I love you, and I'll see you right here, same time, same place next week. And it's going to be from now on Wednesdays at 11.